So now we're going to talk about bowls. We talked about cylinders, and we talked about shaped forms, and we talked about altering forms. And now we're going to talk about bowls, which is similar to a shaped form. But a lot of times your classic bowl is going to have a sweeping floor that doesn't have a 45-degree angle to the bottom. It's a continuous curve. Bowls also tend to have a wide sweep, and so you do oftentimes have to leave a decent amount of extra clay underneath the curve to support it. Because clay is very weak when it's wet, it cannot support itself when it's pushed out wide, and so we have to leave extra clay that we intend to trim away. And so I will also show you in another video how to trim the piece. And you can trim anything you throw. Things that have really narrow tops are hard to trim because you have to flip them over. So it's a bit challenging. But things that are wide or are more cylindrical, are wide at the top or fairly cylindrical, are easier to trim. So I'm just centering this again. You've seen me center a lot now, and hopefully you're getting used to seeing it. So sometimes, like I was saying in your centering video, sometimes you end up with a hole in the middle. It's because I wasn't taking the time to actually make good balls of clay for demoing. But it's important because I want to show you how to deal with it. So if you end up with a hole in the center, instead of just collapsing it and trapping air, which is bad, you stick your thumb in there and you push down until you get to the point where you end that hole, and then you wrap it around by bending your wrists, and then hopefully the next time you cone up you won't have as much of that problem. So let's see if we can cone up without getting too big of a hole, and there we go. So that's much better. I'm not sure if you can see it in the video, but at the bottom of my clay, I've got a lump there, and it's making my hand jostle. So if I want to not have an issue with that, I need to take away that extra clay so that it doesn't jostle my hand when I'm trying to center. So when I think everything's centered, or if I'm to the point where I just need to start throwing, I'm going to open, and I'm going to open this the same way I opened before, but when I start to open the floor is when it's going to change. So I want to leave extra clay at the bottom because I'm going to trim this. I want there to be a foot ring, so it needs to be thicker down there. And now when I start to open the floor, I don't want to try to make a flat floor. I want to try to make a floor that gently sweeps up because I don't want to have to try to get rid of a 45-degree angle when I'm making my continuous curved floor. And I'm still going to compress that floor, even though it's not flat. And now when I go to move this clay, I'm still gonna compress it between my hands to make it thin out, but I don't necessarily have to make it into that volcano shape, especially if I'm going to pull it outwards. So on the wheel, you have to be very, very careful of how far out you pull something because it wants to open up, right? So you're going to pull more up than out than you think you'll need to. But when we do cylinders, we're trying to pull in. When we do bowls, we're not really doing that. We're kind of going out. We're letting it drift out. And ease off at the top. Now, I really like to use ribs when I'm doing bowls. I feel like it really helps shape the piece and get a nice curve. Like I said, you've got a few ribs that you're going to have in your class pack, and there's going to be other shapes you can get in the cabinet. I'm going to use the ones you have in your class pack so that you know that you can do it with those too. You just have to be careful of edges. So if I'm doing a bowl, I'm going to make sure this is a bit cleaner because I'm having a hard time holding on to it. You always want to clean your hands. If you feel like your hands are super gummy, take a minute, clean your hands off. Makes it a lot easier. So if I want to get a continuous curve, I'm going to apply pressure with a rib from the inside, and I'm going to gently change that curve. I'm taking away the extra watery layer, I'm compressing the clay, and I'm opening the bowl more. If you're trying to get a certain curve, you can use other parts of the same rib that have a different curve to get that continuous curve. You also may just need to switch to a different rib that has the curve you're looking for. There are lots of ways you can use the ribs you have in the bag creatively though. You generally always want to have a hand on the outside, but sometimes we need stability to hold onto the rib, so we just need to be really careful and not apply too much pressure at once and have really good control of that rib. So I'm shaping the inside, and really with bowls, the inside is what you're going with because you're going to trim a decent amount of the bottom of the outside of the bowl, right? So the outside profile is not necessarily the finished profile. However, if you could get it close to the inside profile, that certainly helps. So sometimes it's sort of a back and forth thing where you'll shape the inside and shape the outside. Thinking about what you want. We know we'll have to level out this lip and then make final decisions about the lip. I have to clean up the foot. So let's clean up our foot first. We'll take our wooden knife and get under there. And I don't want to take away too much clay here because it might collapse my bowl. But you kind of have to learn how much clay you can take away. It's important to do this because it's really good to have a nice clean surface to start trimming from. If this is all jagged, it's very hard to get a good start at your trimming. So I'll use my wooden knife and carve that away. I'll also use my pin tool sideways like this and just get under there so my wire tool has a nice place to go. And now I'm going to trim my lip. Can pick that up. And now I want to decide, how does my lip end? Is it just continue the curve? Does it curve outward a little bit? I certainly don't want any hard 45-degree, 90-degree edges. I want soft, curving, rounded surfaces. I always have been a fan of bowls that had just a little bit of an outward curve. They sit better together. They stack a little bit easier. And I just sort of like the way it looks. So I'm going to curve that out. Make sure that I haven't accumulated water in the bottom, that I feel like I've gotten good compression, and that I'm happy with my curve. And then I would be done throwing that bowl, and I would run the wire tool underneath it like we have before. And there's a separate video that I'll have of removing pieces from the wheel, so you can watch that if you don't remember how to do that.